Hello, Megan.
Hey, gang.
We got an amazing group today.
Yeah. Some new faces, some co-faces.
All right, so pretty close to 5 after. Let's get started. Megan, I know this is your go-to subject, passionate about this. You had brought it up for the month. As we dive into referrals, kick us off. What question do you have that we can mastermind around?
Yes, guys, I am so passionate about the topic of referrals. Just to kick us off on a mindset around this topic. There's really two reasons I'm super passionate about this topic. And one is, we'll start with you personally, net worth. So there is not like a better way to impact your own net worth than by going out and getting referrals. Like sometimes we think of our income as being fixed, right? Our income is what it is because we're an operations professional, we're salaried. And yet we're in this industry that has this like insane opportunity to bring in referrals. So whatever your team is does for you, whether you get bonus when you get a referral, whether you get a commission, whatever it is, there's net worth opportunity here. And we'll be talking more next week about the referral from your own personal SOI. So come back for that. But the second reason is that, I'm a firm believer that when we've got a transaction inside the operations department, then we own the transaction, right? So we're like responsible for getting that transaction to the closing table. And I would also suggest that we are responsible for converting that transaction into a referral while it's in our hands. Like I think we have so much control over this. And that impacts the team's bottom line. So we have this huge ability to impact net profit. And it also makes us totally irreplaceable. So when you are bringing in or converting transactions during the process into referrals, you have a job for life. Like you are not going anywhere. You're COVID proof, you're pandemic proof, you're recession proof, like period. So this is job security. It's net profit to the team. And it's also net worth. Like referrals are amazing. So just to kind of set the mindset around referrals, there's my spiel on that. Now let's talk about the actual referral during the transaction. So we've got a lot of different ways, proven ways inside our industry to turn that over. What are some ways that well, first of all, who's doing this at a high level? Is there anyone who gets 10, 20, 30% of transactions, a referral out of them while they're in the ops department's hands?
No, we need help. We need all the help.
I love it. You're in the right place. Okay, so no, we're not getting it. But has anybody heard of maybe a way, around the grapevine that is a popular way inside of Keller Williams to get referrals during the transaction?
The promise.
Yeah, the promise. So there's actually a system that's already been designed. Thank you, Cameron. Points for you at our next coaching call. There's already this system that's been designed around getting a referral during the transaction. Mike Hicks, the promise, like write that down because you can literally Google Mike Hicks, the promise, and see Mike Hicks, like the man, the myth, the legend, deliver it himself. And the crazy thing about Mike Hicks' team is that he gets about 7 referrals per 10 transactions in his transaction department. So he's got about 7 to 10. So he's turning over 70% of his transactions into referral. I say he, on his team, they really have a joint effort between the agents and the operations team to turn that over through the system of the promise. Something cool about the system of the promise is that whether you have agents bought into it or not, you can execute it fully in-house on the operations team. So you can choose to include the agents if your agents are like super pumped to do this, but you could also choose not to include the agents if your agents are not super pumped to do this, or maybe not on board, they don't understand the value. And I am all about how amazing it is to control things 100% in the ops team, because sometimes agents don't, want to meet a new standard that we put out. So if we're not going to standardize it, we can also hold it completely in-house. Now, how does he do that? Does anybody know? anybody heard the promise, read the promise? And I know some of you have, so don't be shaking your heads all no. I know you. I know who you are. I'm looking at you. Here she comes.
I have the promise script all typed out. I have yet to use it.
So, oh, great. Is this Zach dropping the promise script in? Love it. I get so jazzed about this topic, y'all stop me because I can be like a rolling train here. So one of the cool things about the promise is it's not just a one-time script. It is scripted. So there is a script, which is great because we can all internalize scripts and use them without having to imagine how to get 70% return during the transaction. And it's system because it's not just a one-time conversation. So the promise system is actually a conversation at the first meaningful real estate interaction that basically says, you know, hey, our whole purpose here is to give you this incredible client experience. And the way that we, we're focused 100% on you, everything in our team is designed and geared towards giving you this amazing experience. Like, isn't that great? And that's literally the first interaction that you have is basically that. And no client says, that sounds terrible. Blah. Like, what would I want that for? Like, everybody agrees with you, right? So this is like getting them on board to your promise. Often inside the same interaction, but just later. So if you're the agent, it would be maybe at the start of the meeting, you would deliver that, but at the end of the meeting, you'd come in for your promise close. Remember, it's a system, so you have to do multiple things. In the transaction side, it might be when you onboard that client, the very first thing you say is that, you know, hey, we've got this promise. Basically what that means is our whole team is designed to deliver the best real estate experience for you. Isn't that amazing? Then you're going to actually onboard them. And then you're going to close it out by going back into the promise and saying, you know, how I mentioned the promise earlier, there's actually something more to it. And that something is that I want something from you. And just to say it, the thing that I want is a referral. And you'll go right into that script. Again, Zach has posted it, so there's no mystery here. You go into that script and you tell them that, the way that you know you're doing a good job, that the team is doing a good job, is that they'll give you a referral between now and the time that they close. And if you deliver less than a good job, it's like very important to you that you hear about that so that you can do better for the next time. So it's a super easy thing to do. Now that's 2 conversations or 2 pieces of the script in the first cycle. The systematized part, and where my kicks will tell you that most of the referrals come in, is you can't just deliver the script one time. You actually have to come back in for a second delivery post-inspection. So I don't know if what Zach probably has all the post-inspection details as well.
It was a video that was posted in January, so I think it runs through all of it. It was in KW Connect, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll do another solid here. I will, as soon as I quit talking and let you talk, I'll drop down the written out script, like what Mike has said, but written out and then tweaked for the ops department to use internally, in case your agents don't do it as well. So post-inspection, you come back in with another script, basically saying like, hey, you remember that promise, how are we doing, and getting their feedback, and then going in and just mentioning, if you've not gotten a referral yet, bringing that up. And there's a really masterful script that helps you to do that. So that is, it's like in 3 parts, and that's the system. It's a phenomenal system for increasing your referrals during the transaction. Anyone here having some limiting beliefs around 70% turnover for your transactions into referrals?
I have a question. Mainly, like most of my clients like to do our updates and communication through text or email. So how do you with the script, I guess, is there an email way to put that in? I don't feel like it's a sincere coming in an email, but some of them just don't want the calls every week. They just want to, email or text.
Well, the first delivery is inside the onboarding call. So if you're not making an onboarding call, I would highly suggest to switching to an onboarding call.
I do an intro call. You mean just
Yep.
I do the intro call.
That one. And
Okay.
then the second one would just be post-inspection. So this would really, even if your client, you have a high text based process, like you don't have a lot of phone calls in your process, so it would really only add 2 phone calls.
Okay.
And it's worth it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
What else is going through your head when you hear there's teams out there getting 70% turnover from their transactions?
My limiting belief is that our agents don't tell us that all of this happens, because a lot of the times we will ask and involve everyone, and then we don't get the phone call of the referral. That's the agent that has the relationship. And so we'll get down to closing and be like, we didn't get a referral at all. And they're like, no, I sent 3, but to the agent or something weird like that. And so I feel like sometimes we're not missing them, but we just don't know.
How could you systematize that? Anybody have thoughts so that it was clear we actually got 3 from this transaction?
Ask them to copy you on it whenever they send one.
It's a great idea.
For a while at closing, we were asking our agents if they got any referrals. But it was kind of disheartening because they would be like, oh, I haven't even asked the whole transaction. I'm like, no, we asked, we told you to ask, and you didn't. And so that was not a good thing to do, but yeah.
Once we can start assigning tasks in command, we can actually start assigning them tasks to request referrals.
So for us, I mean, we kind of have the same issue. Like, not that I don't trust them to do something I'm going to ask them to do, but I feel much better just having control over it. And for us, we are very specific. We use CTE for tracking our transactions. And then the agents have their like ABC lists of clients, and they're very specific with their sources and things like that. So I think if they're tracking the sources super accurately, then they'll be able to more easily let you know. Other than that, I think it's hard because unless somebody goes under contract, then we wouldn't necessarily know. But if they're being just super intentional about tracking their sources on their, in their CRM or their ABC list or whatever that may be, it might be easier to track, if there's a past client referral or just a current and active client referral or whatever that is.
What do you guys think about the bold saying what you focus on expands? Does that ring true for you guys? Like, do we agree? Do we disagree? How are we feeling about the statement? Mostly, largely, people sort of shaking yes. Okay, so if our team decided to focus this as a strategy, right? Lauren's giving me the thumbs up. Thank you, Lauren. I can't see you, so I appreciate that. If we focus this as a strategy, and in your weekly team meetings, we just said like, hey, we're gunning to go from 0% referrals during the transaction to 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever. Let's celebrate who got a referral from an actual active client this week. Let's hear it. Then whatever we want to do on the ops side, we could go in and make sure it's tagged correctly. We could train our team to make sure it's tagged correctly. So it says like, active client referral, if we're wanting to measure this success rate for ourselves. Whatever we got to do to like help our team focus on that conversation, because it's true that agents are maybe not going to just like volunteer to help you with all of the extra tagging because that you just want them to. We've all been there.
Well, and I think this is just one of the tactics we're talking about to the larger picture, right? So if we can make improvements in this category, what does it do for the larger picture? Normally, top, right? If you listen to Confronting Reality, even with Gary Keller, talking to some of the top teams, most have 3 to 4 lead sources that are their top, and then they have 3 to 4 minor. Of that 3 to 4 top lead source usually is database, right? And he said it as if it was new. And what's interesting is the MREA has been saying it. What's like, if you go through, right, what does it say you should get from SOI past client, your database? 12 to 2, right? For everyone that's in it, and we should get a referral when you base out of that. So just keep that in mind that when you think about this is just a piece of it. And yes, the agent should, and yet there's a lot like what Megan's saying, conversation you get into with Are we focusing on it? If it truly is a top lead source and we're saying we want to increase our business, then what does that conversation look like weekly? What's the accountability behind it?
I think too, I know this sounds really stupid, but I kind of recently had an epiphany. Like, we are super focused and intentional with our 36 touch plan, which is obviously geared to our forever clients. But never once did we just shift our mindset and say, why not, when they're in it and they're happy and things are going well, communication's good, why not ask for referrals then? You know, like, I think it's like, okay, well, when they close, let's focus on our 36 touch plan, but why not intentionally ask them throughout the transaction for one?
Yeah, you nailed it. And my kicks, the promise is like, people think you've got to have agents asking for a referral all the time. It's really just a system of 2 scripts. That's it. And then at the closing table, the expectation that if they haven't given you one, you're going to want to talk about that. And most people don't want to have that conversation, right? So between post inspection, when they realize you are actually going to keep track of whether they sent you one, and the closing table, they come up with one, because we know statistically their RAS is on. They actually are going to encounter people who might want to buy or sell. So it's just it's like referrals during the transaction. My epiphany around it, whenever that was, I'm old, was that it's just mindset. Like, are you going to get it or aren't you going to get it? And that's literally it. If you are going to get it, we can script and system and role play around all of it. It's really no different, right? I say my kicks is like leading the band at 70%. I don't know any other team getting 70%. So take his script word for word, right? Literally insert your team name, your name, use the rest of it, because we know it works at a 70% conversion, turning over 70% of his active clients. So use that, throw it into your own system, whatever your process is, add the referral script to your onboarding, add the referral script to post-inspection, your call saying, hey, congratulations, we made it through post-inspection, whatever. Now, it's long. I don't know if you guys have opened up the TypeScript yet. What are the odds that you think you will deliver this at a 70% success rate if you just open it up and read it every time? Probably not so good. Yeah. Seeing everybody say, no, this is a bad plan. Yeah. So just like agents, how important would it be to script and role play this script if you want 70% conversion?
Very important.
Probably pretty important. Otherwise, you're going to deliver it with 0% conversion, right? If you want to deliver it with 70% conversion, you got to master it. What's the energy around script and role playing as an operations professional?
Mirror and match.
Heather's in. She's like, yeah, I'm going to mirror and match. I mean, is anybody doing their stuff on Zoom by chance? Anybody doing onboarding Zoom face-to-face? No, still voice-to-voice? Anybody have some negative energy around the idea of script and role playing as an operations professional?
I mean, I did it with our agents. Like, we were trying to get our agents on board with scripting a while back when we kind of first started the team. So I was like hopping on and calling the FISBOs and all that stuff. And it was definitely uncomfortable because it's out of my natural comfort zone. But I feel like it was good for me to kind of understand that end of things. And it really is true that, because at first it was like, I'm so robotic. I was new to Keller Williams. I'm like, why am I memorizing these things? This is stupid. But really, I did learn to have to overcome objections that way. So I feel like this is kind of similar, where it's long and it may sound like at first like you're just, like reading them this long paragraph, but it's easier then to kind of have like to come up with some kind of reaction, like if they were to be like, you know, like if they were to have some objection with it or not be so receptive to it at first.
Yeah. Love that. Like super honest feedback, Jennifer. Thank you for that. It can be uncomfortable to do it for at first until you become good at it, and then it's kind of fun.
Inconsistency, right? I think like a lot of things, we say we're going to do it and then we have to do it, or we don't give it enough time and we say it doesn't work. So I would also say, even if you do it terrible, it goes awful the first time you do it, even if you script and role played, right, and it goes terrible, the key is get back up and the very next client, do it again. And if you're consistent, you will get better and you will get more referrals.
Yeah.
Now, and I wanted to dive into what Heather said. I just want to make sure I understood right from your conversation too. I think if you have that intro call, I think it's okay to then to add part of that script again or recap it in an email follow-up or text if they prefer. So I just wouldn't use that as my primary. And yet in between time, if they prefer an email, I think it's okay to recap that and go through and have those, you know, there for them to see.
Okay. So you're saying do the call and kind of have that script in there somehow in your initial call and then recap it in the email too. Okay.
Yes, you got it.
Guys, I'm going to drop you in the thing here a link because it's like hard in just our tiny time to like start to wrap our minds around this. So you've got the thing Zach dropped for you, right? The Keller Williams.
That'll be 50 minutes of Mike Hicks talking about how this works. He goes through the script, how they utilize it, the whole training.
You've got now the literally I took the most recent Mike Hicks one and I transcribed it. So like you've got the typed out version. I edited just the parts where if you don't have your agents participating, so that this could be a complete system in-house for operations without agent participation. So you've got that typed script. And now I'm going to drop for you a role play example of what it might look like to practice this with feedback. So you've got so many resources for the promise at this point. Like I cannot wait to hear how you guys are growing your transaction referral rate. What other, so we've got roughly 30 minutes left. Like I know this is this can be like a lot to wrap your mind around, and it can also sometimes feel a little bit, we can feel a little resistant to it. And I have literally been in your chair feeling resistant to this exact thing. So if you're feeling resistant, you're feeling some energy, you're wondering how you would do it, how it would work, let's chat about it. What would you guys want to discuss so that you could actually implement this at a high level on your team? If you're here, you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and trust that.
Well, I guess I'll go first. So our agents are gonna practice the promise script and script practice actively. So our listing agent will do it at a listing presentation. Buyer consults, they'll do them as well. So that initial one is had by them. And then I was actually just talking about this with Ryan the other day, but I think what I'm gonna do is then from there, I'll take our admin will kind of take over the next couple steps from it. So like, you know, the agent put this kind of in their minds, letting them know, hey, just after they say their promise script, my team is going to be touching base with you about it a couple times throughout the transaction. And I want you to, you know, provide honest feedback to them, or if things aren't going well, please let them know too. Because we're a team and we're collaborating about this on the back end. So then from there, after the inspection process, then our admin will make that call. And then I haven't figured this part out yet, but either like a week before closing or like a couple of days before closing, they'll call again and kind of remind them of that, or kind of go through their script again. And then the agent at closing, we'll kind of reiterate that whole thing again. So I think we're gonna have, it'll be a joint thing. But so the agent could 100% handle remembering to do it every time at their consult.
Yeah, and you want to inspect what you expect, like just start having the ops team launch into the script at onboarding, and the client will stop you, right? If they've heard it before, the client will be like, oh yeah, the promise, Sally told me about that. And then you'll just stop. But if they don't say anything, you'll be like, did you hear about this when you met with Sally? And we'll be like, no. Now you're going to actually know, is this being executed in the field or not? And if not, you're trained and prepared to launch straight into it.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, can I have permission to deep dive with you a little bit?
Sure, I'm scared.
Okay. No reason to be scared. We're all family here. All right. So Jennifer, let me ask you this question. What's limiting you to your team to practice this script?
Me personally, for practicing the script,
Mm-hmm.
I think we just learned about it, honestly. Like, it's kind of one of my rainmakers knew about it, and then recently I saw something about it, but it just never was like knowledge of the team. So it was pretty recent, within the last like week or so, really, that we thought about scripting it and implementing it.
No, I appreciate that feedback. And the reason I wanted to highlight this is the mindset shift, because for time's sake, right? Let's get to the point of it. And when you think about it, look at the community you're in. Right? This would be a great opportunity to reach out, all of us, to reach out to each other and say, who wants to role play or script practice this promise script?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That helps with that limiting belief, because now instead of training it to our agents and kind of practicing through there, if we become experts in our conversations in a community that are on the same page, it can help.
Mm-hmm.
So as you think about this, just don't think like I have to do it with just my agents or just my admin. It can work wonders to reach out to a community like this, or in the Facebook, like, look, who wants 15 minutes? I'm on this time zone.
Mm-hmm.
To role play.
Yeah.
Right. And that could help. So just a tip.
Definitely. And I've encouraged, like, even our buyer's agents and our listing agent, they have outside resources that they script with, even though they script with the team too, just for other insights. So I definitely think that would be valuable here. Yeah.
And that's what Megan was saying, right? That's that mind shift, is when we think about asking for the referrals and doing that, it's always like them. Mm-hmm. Them being the agents, the rainmaker, right? And then we go, well, script and role play them. Mm-hmm. So it's just a different way to look at it as far as what Megan's doing. But don't be afraid to reach out to others.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically how Zach and I met, was like accountability / scripting for recruiting, not for the promise, but for recruiting. But, this is an amazing community. Like, what a crazy world we live in, where there's like this national / international, because we have our Mexico friends on here, group that like can come together. You have all these resources. We have one language, like we're talking about the same system and script. I cannot get out of the sun. I'm sorry. Like, half my face is glowing. It's like, which side of me are you getting? The dark side? No. Okay. And you can practice together, and you guys can like meet up and partner together. And, we just came off the 12-week year. What did he say? We're like, 70% more successful when we're peer accountability. So, who's going to call you and say, hey, did you practice the promise today? How are we scoreboarding for team referrals? Moving again. Such a powerful group you guys are. Like, don't underestimate your value, your power together. Andrew, Rachel, I know you guys have some stuff to add because you're never here. So you must be like super stoked about talking about the referral.
I'm still fresh in the role, guys. I mean, I'm barely a year, not even. And my struggle, even as a transaction coordinator, is ironically like getting the message to clients during the transaction that like, talk to me, I'm the guy. Like, I'm doing everything. I'm here for you. So a lot of the stuff that like the promise talks about and that you guys are like talking about with it is like that first initial conversation. And I haven't really grasped that until recently as well, which is kind of ironic. But I've set up a system to where the second that the contract is you know signed, an automatic text goes out to the client is like, hey, this is who I am. I want to talk to you. I want to meet you. You know, let's do this all over the phone, virtual, whatever. That way, because my struggle is it's hard to script and role play if I never even talk to these people to begin with, if the opportunities weren't there, you know, at the start. So I'm trying to get into that more mindset of talking to these people, you know, at least forcing them to talk to me, really, because that's the biggest struggle of our team right now is they're like, our reviews come in and they're like, the agent and then also the other guys were okay too, and I'm trying to change it around. You know, I want them to almost forget about the agent the second I get that signed contract, you know. It's my time to shine. So that's what we've been working on, and I think a lot of these resources are going to help out a lot.
Yeah, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Your turn in the hot seat. You know what, and this is a little bit off topic, but still related, right? Because I think so many people can relate, which is why I want to ask you a question, Andrew, because you brought up a great point. Like how many teams struggle with control of the transaction at onboarding, right? Like it's supposed to be passed off and somehow we're not actually gaining control of the process. So that is like, I don't know if you're on, you can see the video, Andrew, if you're just like called down your phone, but like people are shaking their head, yes. I can tell you as a coach, like this is not an uncommon problem.
Sure.
So here's the question for you. What are you doing systematically? Like what's in your process that enables you to actually take the control that you're looking for?
It's funny that you asked that because that was the exact issue I had with several recent contracts. Like I said, I come from very different worlds, like, you know, job wise. So that's what I'm looking at in my systems that I'm coming up with is automatic text at the beginning to guarantee a time slot that we both commit, both the client and I, to a time. So it's not like, hey, let me try to give you a call, leave a voicemail, don't hear from him in a couple of days, start the process, you know, but committing that time at the beginning, during like the inspection process. Hey, you're hearing from me, next you'll hear from the agent, and then getting closer to like the appraisal, like the key points of each part of the transaction where, you know, good news or bad news comes in. I want to be there to help them, and by turning those into phone calls is I think what's going to make me, you know, the ringer of these transactions, and that's what I'm working on.
I love that. Like the phone call can help you take control. So we're not clients don't owe us anything, right? Like they're not going to give us control just because we say we're the TC. That doesn't mean anything to them. So that is a great aha. Like phone calls can help us take control. Let's just brainstorm it as a group. What else helps us take control of the contract right off from the beginning?
We really need to have agent buy-in, which can be hard. However, like if the agent says, you know, the transaction coordinator on my team is going to be reaching out to you, they'll be handling all of the paperwork. And then throughout the transaction, if the client calls them and they say, I don't know, the client calls them with a question and they say, I don't know, I will have, you know, the TC get back to you on that. Like, I think that kind of helps cement the role that they're not the go-to anymore with questions. However, again, that takes buy-in from the agents.
We can script our agents, 100%. Yes, and that does help, although we can still take control as much as we can even without that, but scripting our agents is super helpful if they will follow that script. What else can we do to take control right out of the gate so that we have a chance to deliver this promise?
Well, it leads me to a great question that Liz brought up, though. I think even before we move on to the next one, right? Which is then what system can we create so our clients aren't asking questions? Right? Like what drove them to ask the agent?
Great question.
Right, so we need to get them whatever information it is before they even ask. And honestly, where I struggle with that though is I don't want to overwhelm them with too much. So how much information do they need, or how much information are they going to want, and how much is going to be too much? Because we definitely have some clients who ask question after question after question, who really want to understand everything, and then we have other clients who just kind of sit back and enjoy the ride. And so I think figuring out who's who and how much we need to tell them off the bat. So
Where could
so
you
how much do I tell them without like scaring them? Like,
where could
to
you
go-
discover that personality behavior type?
I mean, we could probably ask the agent. However, I think oftentimes you can figure some of that out through your very first conversation with them.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking is there's probably an opportunity to look at what scripts or conversation we're having at the introduction or onboarding, where we ask, how do you, how would you prefer communication and information delivered?
We do that. So like our agents are actually doing that at the initial conversations that they're having. And then they put it on we have a turnover sheet. So when they hand over us the transaction, it'll say like what method of communication they like the best. And then like, text, calls, emails, whatever they prefer. And then, like if they're working, what times of day is best to call, email, text them. And then just usually they'll write like notes. So if this person's an engineer, they'll literally write that in, saying he's super detail oriented. It's naturally the way he does things, like he's an engineer for a living, like that kind of thing. Or if they have prior real estate experience, hey, this person's gonna want every single detail because they know how it's run. So they kind of put in some kind of notes about how they like to be communicated with, and they're kind of just like a quick little, it's usually a couple sentences, but it definitely helps us when we're making our first call, because then we're like, okay, this is kind of the personality type we're dealing with. And this is how we're going to have to kind of change how we're doing things specifically for this client.
I love how personalized you guys are getting. And I would just challenge, while that works at a certain level, like once you are closing 300, 500 transactions a year, personalizing to personality type, like the email body, is not scalable. Like, let's just say what it is. So, what if you think about the communication process though, Zach pointed out earlier, like phone calls are always going to win. Like a phone call is going to be as concise as possible. Like you're clearly taking charge, as Andrew pointed out, your time to shine. And then the other thing is, very few people will ever like write you a bad review at the end of the transaction saying, boy, these people over communicated me to death. Like I had so much information. I knew what was happening every minute of the day and it was awful. Like very few people are going to complain on that end of the spectrum, right? Like if they find it a lot of information and they get confused, you're going to follow that email up with a phone call anyway. I'm very pro phone call. And they can always reach out to you. And yet that way, whomever actually is wanting to read it has it, you've future paced them. So they have zero questions about what happens next. And if you're having doubts, the real thing I would say is if you're having doubts or struggling in this department, like your transactions, you're not getting control and you're not sure why, run all of your communications by your coach, because there's probably a language pattern in there that's accidentally sabotaging you. And your coach will be able to like circle it, underline it, point it out to you, give you a suggestion for a rewrite, and help you send that back out so that you're getting control more quickly. So phone calls, emails, everything needs to be in alignment with that concept that you're taking over here. And when you own it, which again, I think actually is a mindset issue, like when you own it, that shows up too, right? If in your head, you know that you own the transaction from here at the closing table, the client starts to get a sense of that. And that's when you can start to like do your cool skateboard tricks with your promise scripts and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think breaking it down into 2 phases helps. I mean, there's just so much you can do, honestly. And building a story brand, if you guys receive that from Mastermind, like This is full transparency. I totally blew off that book. Did not think it was going to be worthwhile. And then I read it. And I think it's a game changer, even on the customer service side, when you think about what we do from the transaction and positioning ourselves as a guide. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, read the book. But going back to what Megan's saying, if you deliver that and you focus in on the phone calls and doing that, there is language you can use, which breaks it down to phases that building a story brand talks about, that simplifies the message, right? So even if it's 80 steps, you still could probably break it down into 3 to 4 phases while you're on the phone, so that when they get the information or that you've already set them up, that's like, look, these are the 3 phases, this is what's going to happen. A lot of work can be done in there. A lot of work.
And this is such a great topic, even though it's only minorly related to the promise, because when you really evaluate your queue capacity and you start hearing teams say things like, oh yeah, like I'm one TC and we closed 300 this year and I did it all by myself. And you're thinking, holy smokes, like how did that happen? Their game, like what they do really well is they get good at this sort of thing, right? The scalability pieces. And all of that combines together to increase your queue capacity from being overwhelmed at, having 20 in your queue to being totally fine with 60 in your queue at any given time. So these
I think it has almost everything to do with the promise script, right? Like I know not directly because we're not talking about it. And yet the more efficient, the more we can internalize our rhythm, right, within the transaction, the more consistent, solid, confident we're going to deliver the promise script, right, and nail it.
So true.
Because we know the way it goes. So, I mean, it all ties in together, and it starts with that first initial intro onboarding, which is owning it, right? Owning the transaction. Andrew was alluding to.
Yeah, Andrew's great point. Thank you, Andrew. See what your question brought, like this whole 20 minutes of discussion. Incredible. Who else has something they would like to discuss around this topic?
Are teams compensating admin who bring in referrals through the promise script, or is it just kind of, this is part of your role, it's something that's expected of you?
Yes and yes. Depends on the team. And everything in between, right? Like some will say, we expect you to turn over 20%, and if you turn over 30%, we'll give you a bonus on the 10% extra. It's just like there's a version of everything out there.
And if you're not, and it's something you're interested in, my only advice to that point would be is show what the return on investment could look like, then have the conversation, not the other way. Right? Create a system, execute it at a high level, then have a conversation if you feel necessary.
Yeah. Like what is possible when you go from turning over maybe 5% of your in-process transactions to 20%, 30%? What's the net to the team? What if you go into your next, 411 or asking for your next income increase, and you say, hey, look, like I actually started focusing on this December 10th, 2020. It's taken me 4 months. We've gone from actually turning over roughly 5% of our transactions to referrals to 20%. I actually did the math for you. I calculated that was gross commission of this. What do you think about that? Rainmaker. Great.
So then I'm guessing we also need to track if this is a source for where those, like where closed business comes from. Because I think right now on our team, we would just lump it into past clients, a past client referral. So I don't know if you would call that current client referral or mid-transaction referral, or
pick a name.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you call it as long as you're tracking it separately.
Totally.
Yeah. And I mean, I think this is totally just perspective and kind of what I'm seeing across teams. So there's not a right or wrong. What I've seen for the most part is that it's still kept just as the client, the referral, but then the administrative team is tracking it separate, so they know like specifically this came through them.
Yeah, many times the referral might end up with the agent. That's fine. You're still winning, right? Like as long as you know what your baseline was. So we were turning over roughly this many. Now we turn over roughly this many. It doesn't matter who the client gives the referral to. But we do have to figure out how to, like Cameron's point, to get it somehow trackable in the system so that we know that the agent got it. Because this is still an administrative win when you're the ones controlling the process. We got 11 minutes left. Think of all the amazing conversations we could have in 11 minutes. Who's got one other thing that they're thinking is a great topic to bring to this brain trust?
I have something. This is Lauren from Fremont, California with Medford Real Estate Team. And because our Rainmaker has such a large sphere, and we extend this to the rest of our team members, is if they have, you know, a referral from their sphere, we like to gift a thank you, like even if it's $5 or $10 Starbucks gift card to that sphere that referred somebody to us. And if we close on that deal, we give a closing gift to that same sphere that referred the client to us, a $50 Visa card or a restaurant card or something specific that they would enjoy, especially now with the pandemic, maybe Amazon, everything's online now. And we just like to give thanks for all of that too. So we like to also reward the referrals too.
Love that. Great addition to the conversation. Like, how are you saying thank you when people do give you that referral?
I don't remember what team, however, I remember seeing some team who actually, I think they had it in their email signature, like, did we fulfill our promise today? And actually then links where you could say like, click yes or no. And I think if you click no, it took you to like what's the word I'm looking for? Like the suggestion, like fill out a suggestion as to how we could do better. And if you click yes, I don't know, it probably took you to like a page where you could fill out your referral. So
That's a great
definitely
idea.
seen that. I'm just not sure I've ever seen anybody with a high turnover rate doing that exclusively.
Oh, I don't think they did it exclusively. However, that was just an additional place that it showed up.
Hi, I'm Danielle with the Ellison Group in Little Rock. I'm kind of sitting in for Hannah, I guess. And I just wanted to say this. So we've been practicing the promise for months now. We say it every morning in our morning meeting. So we've got it completely internalized. And I did not know about these other components. And so it just makes so much more sense now. I was kind of like, why are we saying this? Like, I know the agent just supposed to say it to their clients at their listing appointments, but, you know, or the buyer consult, but how is this going to actually get us referrals? And so these two added times that we as the admin kind of reiterate it and ask for the referral, it all clicks now. So like today's been eye-opening for me. It makes so much more sense why we're doing this.
That's a win for me. I'm going to take that as a win. So yeah, check out the TypeScript because there is the key, like Mike Hicks will even say in probably that interview, because I've seen so many interviews, I can't remember where he says what, but the bulk of the referrals come in after the post-inspection conversation. So that's a great addition. Hey, Ellen's here too.
Hi.
So yeah, great point out, Danielle. Thank you for that. Brittany, you've been so quiet. You have anything extra?
No, just soaking it all in, writing all of this down. It's good information.
Good. 7 minutes left. We totally have time for one more question, one more thought. What do you guys have?
If the bulk of the referrals come in after the inspection, what happens when you don't have an inspection? Like, when do you throw in that second call?
Yeah, I would just find any time to systematize it. You know, like if you've got multiple offer situations and people are foregoing the option period, like we're not doing inspections, whatever, You're just going to just systematize sometime when you're roughly maybe 2 weeks into the transaction, or if it's, you know, you had to throw out any scenario, maybe it's a 5-day cash deal, systematize it 2 days in, just throw in a piece where you're going to come back in and ask, do the follow-up piece, the piece that says, you know, no, we haven't gotten the referral, basically. It's long too, y'all. It's a lot to internalize. And it's the most powerful part of the system. So you got to do the first part to be able to do the second part, but it's the second part that's going to get you the results.
I have a question that I'm surprised no one mentioned. If you don't get a referral, you're supposed to have that awkward conversation after closing. If the agent's bought in, do you make the agent do that, or are we controlling everything so we have those weird conversations?
I think there's a lot of room for mixing it up on the end. So if your agent, like some people go to closing, some people never go to closing, some people have their TC go to closing, sometimes the agent always go to closing. It's awesome if you can do it in person. So if there is a person going to closing, whether that's the TC or the agent, it would be ideal if the person in person could do it. And if that's just not going to happen for whatever reason, like your agents are just not going to do it, or they're supposed to do it, but they're not doing, or whatever, we can definitely bring it back into the operations house and do it post. I would say probably really when we bring it back into the operations house, we need to do it the day before closing, because the day after closing, they are not answering your phone call. They're like trying to figure out where their couch goes. So, you know, day before closing.
Yeah.
And if you can do it eye to eye, it's the most impactful. Ideally, you've turned over so many at that point, this is not happening. This is happening less than you actually getting the referral.
Question for a listing that has a longer listing period. You know, we just have those odd properties that sit for like maybe months or multiple weeks. Should there be another like mini conversation at the handoff? I usually call and do like a handoff call before the transaction coordinator reaches out as a listing manager. Should it be brought up again then, or?
I think it's a great time because you're handing it off. I think it's a great time to bring it up. Just like, hey, checking in. How are we doing on our promise? You know, of course, our, you know, Ellen, the beautiful Ellen, is going to want to get the same results. You know, she's also going to want to get you to say, yeah, like we did a great job. So she's going to be taking over the transaction, but I want to check in. How are we doing? And then they're going to give you some feedback. And then you could go straight into even the post-inspection script. Like, you know, they're going to say something like, oh my gosh, we've given your name out to so many people. And you're going to go into the script of like, you've given our name out to so many people. That's incredible. Like, truly, thank you for doing that, because, you know, word of mouth is the lifeblood of our business. Yet, would it surprise you to know that, as far as I can tell, no one has called us? That's a script, y'all. Did it sound like I was doing a script? Probably not, because it's just like, I've said it 800 times. But that's the literal script. And they're going to say, oh gosh, no one's called you. It's like, well, you know, if you think back to our original conversation, this is why we asked you to call me when you have someone who wants to buy or sell real estate, because then there is a 100% chance that I'm going to reach out to them and get them the help that they're looking for. So it's when you recorrect the behavior, it's just like an objection handle for the agents, right? The objection is, I want to give your information out. I don't want to call you with their information. So you've got to keep correcting that objection throughout. Because once you do that final correction post-inspection, or like Danielle said, maybe at the handoff between listing and TC, that after you help re-correct their thinking, you're going to get the bulk of your referrals, because they probably have given your name out 3 or 4 times. They heard you say that in the first, you did not say that the first time, but that's what they heard you say.
Yeah. One more question. Did I miss it? Is there a script for that conversation at closing that the agent is supposed to have, or we have?
The script is basically this. So we didn't get a referral. Awkward silence.
That's it. That's it. You're ending it right there. So we didn't get a referral.
Yeah. They know what you want. They're going to say words like just awkward silence. Let the silence do the heavy lifting, right? They're going to
literally can't leave awkward silence. I have to keep rambling about something.
You can do it, Jennifer. I believe
It's
in you.
more effective, I know, but I keep like, if even like on our Zoom team meetings, if no one's talking, I'm like talking about something dumb. They're like, all right, Jen.
That's actually, you know, when you say like, here's the script, and then you included awkward silence in there, that's actually something that one of our agents has been working on recently, is not filling in the space. You know, when a client's talking and then they are done talking and you want to reply or respond in any manner, she said she started adding in what feels to her is uncomfortable long silences. And then it like takes a moment for the buyer, she's a buyer agent in this case, to like come up with something else, or that they kind of follow up on their thoughts, or she said it just makes them feel like I'm not talking over them and they're being heard, and then I'm coming up with a thoughtful response. So adding in what she says is that uncomfortably long silence has been like a real tactic for her that she's found to be quite productive.
When
I thought really interesting.
When I had
Extremely
taken
powerful.
bold, oh, sorry. I had taken bold, not the new bold, the old bold, but they do incorporate those uncomfortable bits of silence in, like, intentionally. And I do think that they're important. I just still feel super uncomfortable about them, but with practice and script practice, maybe I won't.
Yeah, practicing that is amazing. Just a little side story. I once coached an entire sales team on outside of real estate, right? This was a big box retail store. And this is how powerful silence could be. We actually increased everyone's average sale by 5 to 10%. And I swear to goodness, all I coached them to was, instead of saying, can I help you find something? Which everyone will reply no. And then 2 seconds later be like, where in the heck's the salesperson? I need to buy. I said, all I did was say, greet them and walk 6 to 7 feet away and wait. That's it.
And just zip it.
Zip it. And you would be amazed, right? And it's much like the same. If you ask a direct question, a lot of times we're just in the habit, we'll say no. But like Megan's saying, say I did not receive a referral, and you present that, it actually interrupts their thought pattern. So they may give you an answer and then they may think of another answer, right? That's more true. Good stuff to practice.
Yeah. So get a
I've
script
noticed-
partner. Like, don't delay. Find someone, even in this group. Go to the Facebook community, get a script partner, and just start practicing. You will, and then track it, because clarity is power, right? See your own power in actually doing this, and then, you know, happen to display that power to other people on your team when you know exactly what it is that you've accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, gang. Next week is referrals from your SOI. So your SOI means your SOI, not the agent's SOI. We will talk about you and your money and how to grow your net worth through bringing referrals to the team. So come to that. See you guys next week.